Welcome in, Christian rock and metal friends, man. Pastor Brad here. In this video, this 80s style classic Christian metalhead is diving deep into Christian grunge. If you love music that's honest, emotional, and faith-driven, this is going to bless you big time. Over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to unpack the origins of grunge, the spiritual impact of Christian grunge, and I'll introduce you to two powerful Christian grunge bands that I believe will absolutely rock you up for Jesus.
Rocking you up for Jesus Christ with classic-style hard rock music and practical Bible teaching.
If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that this video is part of a series of videos that I've been immersed in, exploring the origins, bands, and impact of the many subgenres of Christian rock and metal music. You can see some of those Christ-honoring subgenres that we've covered thus far flashing by here on the screen. And I've compiled every single episode thus far, and I'll continue to do it until I finish that series into a single playlist titled Heavenly Headbanging, Discovering the Subgenres of Christian Rock and Metal Music. The link to that playlist is in the description to this video, and at the end of this video, I'll do a handoff so you can click right on it and dive right in, man. Grunge was born in the United States in the Pacific Northwest, specifically around the Seattle area in the late 80s and early 90s. Bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam brought this raw, heavy, emotionally vulnerable sound to the forefront. It blended a little bit of the energy of punk, the grit of metal, and the emotion and introspection of alternative, and became the voice of a generation wrestling with pain, alienation, and real life. Musically, grunge is all about heavy distorted guitars, dramatic dynamic shifts, emotionally raw vocals, and lyrics that speak to the heart of life's struggles and pain. Unfortunately, the vast majority of mainstream grunge address those human struggles from a place of hopelessness and despair. But here's where things get good. God raised up bands in that same era who took the sound of grunge and filled it with hope, truth, and the gospel. Christian artists wholeheartedly embraced the honest, gritty, emotional aspects of grunge, but they brought a message of redemption, healing, and life in Christ. Christian grunge offered a voice to believers who were struggling and needed to be reminded that it's okay to be authentic and open and real with your struggles, and that Jesus is with us in our pain. It also became a mission field. Many fans of mainstream grunge stumbled onto these Christian bands and found a message of hope and salvation through the music.
Grammatrain has certainly had a big impact on my life. How did the band begin, Paul, and how did the name Grammatrain come to be?
Pete and I met through, I played for Blood Good for a couple of years. They hired me to do some tours for them.
Yep.
And there was a Bible study, and Mike asked me to play drums for it at the Neutral Zone, and Pete was the guitar player. I think Pete had been doing some stuff with David Safiro. And so anyway, Pete and I met, and we just kind of hit it off, and we started writing together. And my brother lived with me at the time, and we just kind of had him play bass for us just because we needed somebody, and we had no idea that the three of us would gel so well. And he's my little brother, so especially back then, he was still just kind of my little punky brother, and he's my brother, but it worked really well. And Dalton, he's really blessed because that guy's got a left brain and a right brain. He's very brilliant with computers and things, and knows a lot about theory, and he can really perform musically really well, where I tend to be more on the music side of things. When it comes to computers and manuals and stuff, I don't perform very well.
Awesome.
And the name, I had written a poem about my grandma, and she used to sit and look out the window and wait for the Lord to take her home. And it's kind of a long story, but I had a poem called Grammatrain, and we had our first gig within a few weeks or so of starting this band, and it was a kegger, ironically, and we had to come up with a name. So I submitted this to Pete to see if he wanted to write a song out of it, Grammatrain, and it was a little wordy for a song, but we were both thinking, I was thinking, Grammatrain would be a cool name for a band, and he called me up and he goes, what do you think about Grammatrain? We're like, yeah. So our first gig, we were actually called Grammatrain.
Wow.
and then we were both actually thinking the same thing again about, let's drop the S and just call it Grammatrain. And the other day I was talking to Pete, and I said, Pete, do you ever you ever say Grammatrain to yourself and wonder what we were thinking when we named the band Grammatrain? It sounds fine. I'm used to saying it now, but sometimes I think Grammatrain, like, what were we thinking? But,
Wow.
you know, I'm so used to saying it now, it's just, I'm fine with it, you know?
That's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, really.
Dude, I thought that was a great story. Listen, you may or may not know this part of my testimony, man, but my grandma played a central role in my coming to Christ. If you ever go back and listen to the opening track to my album, Out of the Hellhole, I talk about a prophetess of Yahweh, right? A voice, a woman speaking from God into my heart, and that was my grandma.
A prophetess of Yahweh heard my heart's cry and delivered a clarion revelation.
She was bold and open and unapologetic about her love for Jesus, and she was just as tenacious about her love for me that was unconditional and powerful. So I just hold her up as such a mentor force in my life. So when I heard Paul talking about his grandma, and that the name actually came from Grammatrain, I just thought that was so awesome. But listen, dude, these guys were absolutely no joke. They brought the thunder. Heavy, crunchy guitars, that raw vocal style, and songs that weren't afraid to ask tough questions. If you're into that classic Seattle grunge sound, Grammatrain is your jam. Their debut album, Lonely House, hit hard, musically and spiritually, filled with songs that rocked your speakers but also pointed you to Jesus. Then came their follow-up album, Flying, which showed even more depth, sonically and spiritually. Poor Old Blue also came out of the Pacific Northwest, the same stomping grounds as Nirvana and Soundgarden, but instead of hopelessness, they brought hope. Their sound was definitely grungy, artistic, you'd hear those fuzzy guitars, dynamic shifts, and introspective vocals, but with a layer of creativity and spiritual depth that really made them stand out. These lyrics from their song Where Were All of You, from their 1994 album Sin, are a good example of Poor Old Blue's message and style. The next time around, the lyric says, a child can die, a man can cry, and nailed on high to give us life. Albums like Mind Size and Sin are absolute classics in the Christian grunge world. Lyrically, they didn't shy away from difficult topics like doubt and pain and identity, but they always pointed listeners back to redemption in Christ. Their message was never preachy, but it was authentic. You got the sense that they were walking the journey with you, pointing to Jesus along the way. They showed that you could be honest about your struggles and still be grounded in your faith. And that ministered, as you can well imagine, to a lot of people. While I was doing my research for this video, some other bands that frequently came up as Christian grunge were Plank Eye, Caedmon's Call, and early Bleach. So if you're into this style, man, you might check them out if you don't already know them. And of course, I know that if there are some grunge fans out there, you're going to fill the comments up with all the bands that I didn't mention in this video, which is awesome because viewers then can discover those bands. So that's just a little introductory look at what happens when grunge meets grace. And remember the playlist that I mentioned at the top of the video, Heavenly Headbanging. Man, if you're ready to do a deep dive into the world of Christian rock and metal subgenres, right here it is. Keep your eyes on Jesus.